Hello 7th graders. Today we're going to be making Emily's pasta with broccoli. This is a recipe that a former student gave me and it's delicious. The first ingredient that you're going to need is the broccoli. Now when you buy broccoli, if you go to the store, you want to look for a stalk of broccoli that has a bright green color. The buds on the top are closed and tight. There's no yellow or brown spots. Sometimes you'll find stalks of broccoli that still have the leaves on. You can just pull those leaves off. For our recipe today, we're not going to be using the stalk as it is. We're going to be cutting it into flowerets. A flowerette is just the smaller pieces of the broccoli. So you're going to go through and cut that off for flowerets. Once you've got all of your ingredients pulled together, we need to look at the recipe and follow the steps on the recipe. There's actually 3 recipes going on at one time. We need to make broccoli, we need to make pasta, and we need to make a sauce to pull all of it together. This is what your final product is going to look like. I've got the nice rotini pasta and the bright green broccoli. It's covered in a sauce. Alright, once you've got all of your ingredients pulled together, we need to start looking at the recipe so that we can follow the recipe steps. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is start thinking about the broccoli. We chose our broccoli, you've washed it, taken off any leaves, we've cut it into flowerets. They look something like this. Now that seems like a really big piece. I don't think I'd want to put that on my fork and put it into my mouth. So the recipe says to separate broccoli florets from the stem. Cut the florets into bite-sized pieces. So just go ahead, use good safety skills, put your fingers to the side of the knife, and then just cut down through the floweret. You can trim off any of the extra stem so that you get more bite-sized pieces. Something you wouldn't mind putting on your fork when you're eating. Once you've got the flowerets cut, you should have a saucepan filled with water. I'm going to ask you to use a medium-sized saucepan with a lid. Please fill 2 inches of water into this pan. You're going to put it on high heat with the lid on it. That helps the water to heat up more quickly. If you take the lid off and keep looking at it, you're letting out heat, and then the water cools down. So just cover it, high heat. When you start to hear it moving around a little bit in there, give a peek and see if it's bubbling and boiling. Once it's boiling, you can take the lid off, turn the heat down to medium-high, and then you can drop your broccoli flowerets into the water. You want to cook these until they're tender crisp. If you've ever seen broccoli that's overcooked, it's yellow and mushy. We don't want that. So we're going to cook it about 3 minutes. At 3 minutes, we're going to check for doneness. Take a fork, stick it into the broccoli. If it won't go in, it's still too crispy. If it slides in pretty easily, it's probably done. If you'd like to, you can take one flowerette, put it under some cold water, and you can taste it to see if it's done. If you determine that the broccoli is done, it's time to get it out of the heat. So we're going to take it off the stove, and you're going to hold it by the oven-proof handle and say, "Chef coming through with hot water," so that everyone in the kitchen knows you've got a pot of hot water. We don't want anyone stepping back into it and burning themselves. So very carefully, coming through with hot water, you're going to go over to the sink. In your sink, you should have your colander. We're going to drain the broccoli in the colander. So put that in the sink. Take your hot pan. You're going to pour away from you. Remember, for safety, we don't want to have steam come up to the face. So pour away from you to drain your broccoli in the colander. The recipe asks you to take cold water and run it over the broccoli to stop the cooking. You're going to cool down the broccoli. Once you're done with that, you can just take your pan over, set it on an oven-proof surface. Meanwhile, someone else has been doing the pasta. What they've done is taken a little larger pan. Pasta needs a lot of room to move around. It's a starchy product, and if there's not enough water, it will stick together. So they've taken a large pan, filled it up with about 4 inches of water, put a cover on it, put it on high heat. Set that on the burner to come to a boil. If you take the cover off again, it won't boil as fast. So leave the cover on high heat. Now, when you see water starting to bubble, little bubbles at the top, you can add your pasta. You're going to take the cover off, using it as a shield to direct the steam away from you. Set the cover on an oven-proof surface. You don't want that hot on the counter. And then you're going to add your pasta to the dish. You're going to give it a quick stir to just start it moving around. If you don't stir it, it will group up on the bottom of the pan and stick together. So a quick stir. Then you're going to turn the heat down to medium-high. If you've ever left the heat on high with pasta, you know that it can overflow and it creates a real mess. So you don't put the cover back on and you turn the heat down. Give it a stir. You don't want to stir the pasta continuously because that cools down the water and the pasta will cook as well. The box says to cook about 7 to 8 minutes until it gets al dente. If you think about the word al dente, you probably go to the dentist, maybe you know someone that has dentures. Dente means teeth in Italian. So al dente means the pasta should be cooked enough that you can bite through it with your teeth, but not so soft that you can use your tongue. You have to bite into it with your teeth. So you want to test al dente. Again, take your fork, take a little piece of pasta, run it under cold water, and you can test it to see if it's done. When your pasta is done, you're going to very carefully, by the handles, and say, "Chef coming through with hot water." You're going to go back over to the sink. The colander in the sink has your cold broccoli. We want to warm up that broccoli and drain the pasta at the same time. So we're going to dump the water and pasta into the colander, and it will drain out the pasta. And it will heat up the broccoli at the same time. Then the directions tell you to take that pasta broccoli mixture, put it back into your large pan. We're going to use this as our bowl to toss everything together. So while someone has been doing the broccoli and someone has been doing the pasta, another person has been making a sauce. That sauce is not your typical Alfredo sauce, which is very heavy with cream and butter and cheese for an Alfredo sauce. We know that's high in saturated fat. We're going to cut that down a little bit. So for our sauce, we're going to be taking some butter and olive oil, melting that on the stove, and then we're going to add our garlic to that. Earlier, we took the skin off the garlic and prepared it, cut it in half. Now we're going to add that to our saute pan, stir that around a little bit. The directions tell you to saute until lightly colored. Kind of like when you toast bread and it gets golden brown. We want our garlic to be golden brown. But if your job is to stir the butter, you can never ever leave the butter. Butter burns very easily. You can turn for a minute, and when you turn back, it's black. And it smells bad and it tastes bad. We don't want to do that. So if your job is to be in charge of sauce, that's all you do. You're right here all the time. When the garlic starts to get golden brown, you can remove it with a slotted spoon, put it on a cutting board. If your group loves garlic, you can mince up that garlic and throw it back into the sauce. If your group doesn't care about garlic that much, you can throw away that. All we wanted to do was flavor the butter and olive oil mixture. Very last thing, we're going to serve our pasta now. So the directions tell you to drizzle the sauce over the pasta and broccoli mixture. So you're going to drizzle that over the top. You're going to add your salt and pepper, give it a stir, your Parmesan, give it a stir, you're ready to go. Go ahead, serve up your pasta dish, and remember to call me over so I can see what you've done.